View from the Gutters, episode 88. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Swamp Thing by Brian K. Vaughan, Volume 1, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 4744.
So are we ready to go?
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to episode 88, everybody. I'm Tobiah Panshin.
I'm Joe Preti.
I'm Kayleigh Fleeman.
Brant Gillihan-Eddy.
And I'm Cade Reynolds.
And we've got Brant and Cade back, but Chart has fucked off on us. We don't know where he went.
We just got to keep...
I'm assuming that he's lying in a ditch somewhere. By choice. Always by choice.
Pretty soon we're just going to take on numbers, like this is the prisoner, and we're just going to be like, I am number 7. I am number 3. I am number 8. And that's the only way you'll know.
That sounds like Cylons.
Who's number 1?
I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, Kayleigh, you just ruined the entire episode.
Yeah, you can't... But she's subterfuge.
You have to say, I say who is number 1, and you say, I am number 2.
Nope.
You've never seen The Prisoner.
Nope.
God damn you.
I remember you were talking about it at Comic-Con and that I should watch it, and I didn't.
That TV show is incredible.
It is Patrick McGowan.
But it is episode 88, and we are talking about Swamp Thing by Brian K. Vaughan, book 1. And Kayleigh, you recommended this book to us.
Yes, I did.
And you have reread it now.
I have.
Do you feel any less ambivalent about it now than you did last week?
Only slightly. And I think and I'll go into this later, but I think I figured out what disturbs me so much about this comic and why I don't know where I stand on it, and why when I'm done reading it, I just feel unsettled for days. And I finally put my finger on it.
Well, what is it?
It's that the main character is neither a villain or a hero, and it's not done in a way where it's like, oh, she's an anti-hero, or she's this person with her own agenda. She's just both of those things simultaneously, and it's really weird, and it makes for really weird reading.
Yeah, there's definitely a very weird sense of ambivalence in this series, I want to say.
I mean, I'm going to do you one better. It's not that she's not... Like, I can deal with characters that have heroic traits and villainous traits. And I don't think, for me anyways, that was the problem I had with this. It's that she's a fucking non-character. Like, I really feel like she's just kind of thrown in there, and, like, her journey is supposed to have some kind of deep philosophical meaning for the reader. But really, it's just a bunch of soapboxing that's, like, been linked together with all this random... horrible violence and like waxing philosophical that in the end I'm just kind of left going, you told me nothing.
Which
like
we were talking about this before we recorded, you and I, and you said the exact same thing, and I said, welcome to Brian K. Vaughan. Because that's very much what he does throughout Y the Last Man, although oddly he hasn't really done it in Saga, which is interesting, and I mean that could just be the gulf of 15 years making him
I think that's
a better writer.
I think that's probably a lot of it is. I think that this is... I can see why he got a career after this. I think considering the time it was published in and the weight of the material, I could see where people would be like, wow, this Brian K. Vaughan kid's got some class. Like, we should give him more jobs.
Moxie, kid.
And you know, like I have the same, like I feel like Y the Last Man has some rough spots, but ultimately, you know, it's a pretty ambitious project. It's pretty long, and he's got some interesting things in there. And then Deus Ex Machina, he's got some good beats in it. Like I feel like, at least in my experience, Vaughan has a problem sticking his landing on a story.
I don't disagree with you. And just to be clear, I liked Y the Last
Yeah,
Man.
and I do
thought
too.
it was good, but
and I don't
if you
feel
asked
it's
me what
anywhere near as meandering.
No, but if you asked
is...
me the flaws in Y the Last Man, I would say, well, it's kind of meandering. He tends to soapbox a bit, and at the end, a lot of terrible stuff happens, and not a lot seems to ever be produced by that.
Yeah.
But I think that he is definitely growing yet as a writer.
Yeah.
He's getting better. Why the Last Man was better than this was. And this is not necessarily bad.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not completely without merit.
There is.
It's not trash garbage.
I wouldn't say it's trash garbage. There is one shining thing in this book, and it is in the last story where they're talking about their fathers. And Pilate's story about his father, I thought, was incredibly well written. It was touching, and it was powerful. And it is the only part of this book that I did not read and go, eh.
It was actually a very realistic story. It was done very well.
Maybe it's because, like, the Challenger going up and the demise of the Challenger is something that I remember from my childhood. But I think it's also because we talked about this a little bit in Saga, and I think about it when Brian K. Vaughan comes up, is that he's got, my biggest problem with him is that he tries too hard at times. And this, to me, this whole book smacks of him trying too hard. He wants to be shocking. He wants to be over the top. And I feel
he wants to get a job.
And like, that's cool. But like, you're writing Swamp Thing, right? Like, you have the job. Relax and it's clear that he has an idea of where he wants to go. But I just feel like he's pushing way, way too hard. That whole second story on the ship is just like, I read that and it's like, it just felt, it smacked of like a 15-year-old thinking of like the worst possible case scenario.
It's the worst of all worlds. It's when a writer writes about writing.
Yeah.
And that almost never seems to work. Very, very rarely.
But the characters are just so cardboard and like, it just seems, to me, it felt false. And that's what I don't like.
The two things that occurred to me about that specific story, and it kind of illustrated to me the kind of the bigger problem for me, is that I feel like, you know, it's funny, we read some of these comics like, Avengers Forever and some of the stuff that we read that was pre-aughts, and we're like, wow, there's so much text and there's so much exposition. But there's a difference between exposition and dialogue, and some of these issues are so dialogue heavy. And so I think that one of it is he clearly hasn't learned how to pace himself. I actually think that the second story could have been better 12 issues in, when I knew more about, is it Tefé? Like, I don't think that's a story worth, like, I mean, that's what I found problematic with this in general. It's like, it seems like Swamp Thing has always had a mythology that I don't necessarily care for. Magic in the DC universe in particular has always been something that I'm kind of meh. I prefer Marvel magic when it comes to that sort of stuff because the DC magic stuff seems so not convoluted, but like maze-like.
Well, and overwrought.
And so I realized that like one of the big things that Moore did in like making Swamp Thing this thing was introduce the Parliament of Trees and all this stuff, and like he's not like Alec Holland, or Swamp Thing isn't really Alec Holland. Swamp Thing is Swamp Thing that thinks he's Alec Holland, like, like, ooh, my mind is so twisted, around and all this stuff. And so I feel like if this character had stronger, I don't want to say motivation, because part of the whole thing is that she's a force of nature, right? So she's not supposed to be hero or villain. She's supposed to be this thing that has kind of not an agenda, but at least a...
Well, she's supposed to have some kind of goal.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, you've got the, like, I'm going to find the Tree of Knowledge, but It's such a nebulous goal.
Yeah,
and she doesn't really seem to have much in the way of motive. Like, she's not motivated, she's not proactive.
Right.
She's just kind of going around reacting to things.
Well, and that's the problem telling some of these stories, is that they seem just as random as they are, because the only character we have as a consistent through line is you can't identify with, because you don't know what their point of view is. Like, I was rereading parts of the story where the family burns down the forest and she decides to kill the tree, and then she, comes back and they're like, oh, we accidentally set the campfire, and then she takes them and they drive, and then she threatens to shoot them, and the father's like, no, kill my girl because we can have another kid. And it's like, that's all so super compressed and it makes no sense. And and her reactions make no sense because I have no understanding of what her motivations are. She's like, I have to make the best choice I can. And literally as soon as she comes out of her like trance thing, the guy that she's met is like, hey, you saved a bunch of lives. Like these people are okay. And like, I understand that on one hand, the fact that those people accidentally started the fire would be upsetting. Like, is your reaction in that moment being like, well, I made the call to save the people in this world, not the other world? Is your reaction really going to be like, well, since it clearly was their fault on accident, now I'm just going to go ahead and have to murder these assholes or teach them this really intense lesson through this really contrived set of circumstances?
And that's what kind of bothers me about it, is that if it's naive, like, force of nature wandering through the world trying to grasp some kind of understanding, then yeah, okay, we're seeing these through her eyes. We don't really have the understanding of events because she doesn't have the understanding of events. That's fine. But that whole thing where she takes the family out and she's fucking like, oh, you don't have to kill somebody to hurt them, or like, that was entirely too methodical. It was entirely too fucking like, that is something that somebody... Like, it was purposeful, and that's what I didn't get about this, is that she would seem so purposeful sometimes. And other times just, what's the tree of knowledge? I don't know. Tell me, Mr. Priest. And it was like, how is this the same character?
Right, like, it almost would have made more sense if she just pulled the gun out of the truck at that moment and said, well, all right, since I had to kill somebody of importance in another world, I'm going to kill someone of importance here. You pick. Like, even if that scene had happened an issue and a half earlier... because it was just like pure emotional response, then I think you're right. Like, then it would have been like, okay, she's a capricious thing trying to find her balance or whatever. But yeah, there's like weird. Yeah, it's just.
There's times when she seems entirely too.
Well, yeah. And
aware.
I always wonder about these kinds of books where it's like, how much interference is there from editing? How much pressure do you have to be like, all right, I'm telling a Swamp Thing book, and everyone's really pressuring me to include all of the obscure. Like, is this a case where there are some writers who are like, I'm going to include all the obscure back matter on this so that it feels like a legitimate story? Grant Morrison. Or is it like, no, Brian, we want you to tell this story, but we need you to include the Parliament and these things because we want it to have some sort of narrative consistently because I'm this editor and I feel like that's really important. And so then he's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to insert like a plant samurai. That'll be good, right? And I'm like, what? Yeah. You know, and then I guess all the Parliament trees, they're dead. They are like people and they eroded. What?
Yeah, right.
You know,
yeah.
And it's like, was that him being like, I have this cool idea, and then you're just kind of like, I don't get what you're talking about, or was it, okay, Brian, like these beats are neat, but we need more Swamp Thing stuff. Yeah. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll add this? Question mark?
Yeah, it smacks of like, hey, we're gonna give you a Swamp Thing, and you can do whatever you want. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna do this, and they're like, well, you have to include this. And he's like, well, that doesn't really fit with anything I have. And they're like, well, you got to put it in there. So it's like, oh, okay, I'll do this. But like, even at that point, like, I think what it smacks of to me is a writer that even with the editorial interference, of which I'm sure there was some. It smacks to me of he just wants to do too much. Yeah. He's so desperately wants to convey this message about environmentalism and about the balance of like people and the planet we live on, and like these kind of morality that he has, which is a Brian K. Vaughan thing. Like, he's very big into espousing those things, but like he's just too.
Yeah. Having your character fundamentally introduced by pointing out that in her infantile desire to bring justice to the ecological sphere, she cuts off the hands and feet of a bunch of loggers and chains them up like paper dolls. That's a whole other element of, she's an elemental with great power that's confused, to she's a psychopath that's just wandering the earth, basically doing whatever the hell she wants under some weird like notion of like, if there was more done to be like I guess if the exposition of Swamp Thing and his wife were like, how do we deal with our psychopathic daughter who is clearly unstable and Constantine says we cannot destroy it, then I'm like, okay, I understand this. Like, I get it. Like, the whole point is that she is something that needs to be dealt with. So we're going to see it from her point of view, and she's going to espouse some great things, but the thread through the back of our minds will always be, this is the 13th level of hell, walking around on Earth being like, you've destroyed Mother Earth, I'm going to chain you up and kill you. It's Hellraiser. It's elemental Hellraiser, but
I think at the end of the day, for me, what the series really lacks is grounding.
Well, yeah, there's nothing to tether
there's
it.
no real place to grab onto. She doesn't have a strong character. Like, there isn't a through line from the series where you're going, okay, I see where this is going to. These things are happening. This character is evolving. Like, I feel connected to this story.
Yeah, and then he compounds that sin by giving her back characters that he fleshes out and makes much more interesting. Like, even though I think, once again, in Pilot's backstory, we see another attempt to try too hard with with him sniping the mother and her baby. It's like, why did that need to be in there? There were many other ways that you could have shown the horror of this act without having to do that. It feels like he's trying too hard.
Yeah.
Like when fucking crazy writer dude shoots the pregnant lady in the stomach, right? It's just like, okay, I know when I'm being fucked with. I know when I'm being manipulated.
It's
You're trying to manipulate me.
It's over the top.
Yeah, and like,
There is one thing, though, that I really did like about this series, and that is the way that he uses the narration boxes, especially in the first issue, because you don't know who's talking, and so it creates like you're supposed to reach certain conclusions about what's being said. It's only when you get to the end that you realize who's actually talking, and it recontextualizes everything that's come before it for you.
I feel like yes, the narration box use was really unique and interesting in issue 1. I found myself becoming progressively more irritated with it because
oh yeah, it definitely got more
assigning a different character
on.
in every single issue to be the narration box, I found it to actually perpetuate that sense of lack of grounding. So I want to recommend it one day, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but Greg Rucka wrote The Punisher. It's been a couple years now, but one of his central conceits of his run on The Punisher was that he was telling the story through other people's points of view, and he was treating the Punisher as a act of like a force of nature. And so it was about people walking in and being like, holy crap, this thing, the Punisher, has been here, and look at all the crazy devastation it's wrought, or whatever. I feel like this concept would have worked better if we had the same thing. If we had some, like, even the guy, the half-burned
Barnabas.
Yeah, Barnabas from that. Like, even if it was like him or, stronger arcs, and I guess he kind of did it with Barnabas than Pilot than whatever, but like, I feel like he maybe even was trying to do that. Like, basically have those people be the anchor and have Tefé be this thing that comes in, but she has so much of the camera time, quote unquote, and espouses so much that it's like, it feels muddled, like who you're supposed to be paying attention to.
I kind of feel like it would be a stronger story because you've got Alec Holland, the Swamp Thing, I haven't read a lot of Swamp Thing, but my impression of him is that, like, I'm the elemental, I'm the avatar of the green on Earth. Like, I serve the green in the realms of man or whatever. And it would have been very interesting to see his daughter basically show up and be like, I'm the avatar now, I'm going to do what I think is best. And you have like him and his wife running around dealing with the consequences of all the things that she's doing without really getting a good look at her as a character, at least not at first, and really kind of building her up, but through negative space, through seeing the things that she's done and the connections that she's making with people, where you go, she obviously has a very strong agenda. She is going to do specific things for specific reasons, and we're trying to figure out what those are. We're trying to understand her.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt.
No, go
you.
ahead. Go ahead.
My biggest problem with
Tefé, didn't interrupt me because I let you go.
My biggest problem with Tefé is that her punishments and like rewards are so wildly inconsistent.
Oh yeah.
Like the florist who's like, he loves flowers, he finds them beautiful, but he's allergic to them, right? So he has all these pots. Instead of having the flowers take root again, She just like has them expout like all their pollen and kill this, or like almost kill this guy. And it's like, okay, I get that you, in your mind, like he deserves to die, but are you going to let the plants die too? Because you didn't like do anything with them, you know, like there's just a
bunch of stupid flowers.
Right. And
they're just stupid flowers. And it's like, I feel like that keeps happening where she's like, oh, this poor tree in New York City, but she doesn't fucking do anything about it. She doesn't have it like grow massive roots and take over the street or nothing. She doesn't do anything like that because she's so wildly inconsistent and she doesn't have a set agenda. It's like she just kind of wants to fuck shit up. Like, that's her whole point in life.
And I think what this story desperately needs is a Dr. Watson. Like, because Tefé is such a non-entity, because she is so inconsistent, you need somebody through whose eyes you can view her and have some point of context, even if it's not hers. Like, Barnabas would have been a perfect thing for a perfect POV character where you're like, I watch her get out of the car. I watch her, speak sharply to the old man. And then all of a sudden the pollen and the blah, blah, blah. And like, maybe then he can give us some kind of context. Like, she reacts out of anger, blah, 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 blah. She has so much power. And like, then that gives you something to hold on to. So you can be like, okay, like, maybe that's not her motivation, but at least we have something to kind of be like, all right. And then you can go back through. And the great thing about that is it gives you a lot of meat to really get into and kind of look back there and go, well, he's saying that, but later on he says this. So what's his motivation in this? Like, how much of his own feelings for Tefé are coming through and like his ideas about her and stuff. But it just feeds more into the general theme of like inconsistency everywhere. And it becomes incredibly frustrating to read because at some point I'm just like, make a fucking decision already. All right. Stop preaching to me. Stop fucking telling me like all you're doing is telling me shit. You're not showing me fucking anything. You need to show me something.
One of the parts that I actually found most bothersome was we had this whole setup issue with Mary and Mary's friends that ends with Tefé basically bursting out of Mary and killing the two people who have been like her friends throughout life. And they kind of mention it occasionally, but it's never dealt with in any kind of emotional way.
Yeah, I mean, that felt also like a weird, emotional baiting thing. Like,
yeah.
And we kill them all, ah, ha, ha, ha. And then, like, to basically wrap it up in half of an issue next time, like, Mom shows up and is like, oh, I just wanted to let you know that we basically body snatched your daughter and switched her out because we thought it was really important and we're really sorry and I guess you deserve to be mad at me. And so it's like in 30 pages, we went from like, oh, we're going to watch this, like the metamorphosis of this girl into some dark thing. And like, how does this connect to Swamp Thing? And I'm not 100% sure. And I'm trying to understand. And then it's just like, no. It was just a body. She was, it's her Mary suit.
Yeah. No, totally. Like when I was reading this, I was thinking about the beginning of Sandman and how when you come into Sandman, he's just like the first issue is him being trapped. And then it goes from there and it takes a good 12 issues before he's firmly established as who he is. He has to get out of the trap he's in, and then he has to go and reclaim his whole royal items with which he is imbued with power that has lessened his own power. And by the end of that first year, you had a good idea of who Morpheus was. You had a good idea of kind of the world he inhabited. And what I desperately feel about this is that because it is so compressed, it comes across as jumbled. There's none of that character building. Like, I would have liked to see at least 5 or 6 issues of her struggling with that. Like, you can still have that moment where she catches them, but then you don't have her just discard her Mary suit and like fuck off into the night, right? Like, build on that.
Yeah,
Give us something within that character to fucking hold on to.
You could have an entire running subplot of the Mary identity and the Tefé identity fucking duking it out, like talking with each other, or her struggling like, am I Mary, am I Tefé? My Mary identity says don't hurt these people, but my Tefé identity says these motherfuckers need to die.
Which would give you a fucking brilliant grounding for this the fucking constant.
It would be a great source
and
of internal
apparent
conflict.
But aside from that, it could give you this very nice metaphorical viewpoint of all the fucking soapboxing that's going on. Because then you literally have a human being that is inside the body of this elemental that's arguing her own case and arguing for her own feelings, is arguing humanity's case. And
Absolutely.
that, because it's subtle, it's, it gives you a nice kind of richness to the rest of the story. And so then Tefé is grounded. We have this idea that, like, she doesn't know what the fuck that's going on. She doesn't really understand the world around her. All she knows is that she can fuck people up, and, like, that's not necessarily the best way to go, but it's a lot easier than fucking dealing with things, in some kind of emotional sense, because she doesn't really understand emotion,
On a certain level, it's kind of astounding to me that this is the same Brian K. Vaughan who's writing Saga right now.
Which in 90% of ways is fucking so not this.
Yeah.
The exact opposite of this.
Yeah, well, and I mean, this does. It really does feel like freshman effort.
Is this his first
Yeah.
pro work?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me to hear the things you guys are bringing up. I'm not sure. Have any of you read past where we stopped?
No.
The next volume? Okay. I did, because I didn't actually know where we were stopping.
Okay. Oh, gotcha.
I didn't have the graphic novel, so I just kind of read all the issues, because there's only 20 of them. And what is interesting to me is I do see exactly where you guys are coming from. And I do really have to agree with a lot of the stuff that Brant said. I can easily see that within these first 9 issues. There is some stuff a little later on. In fact, it might be right after this one, where Constantine comes back and becomes a major player in the story. Where they do kind of resolve a lot of the stuff you guys are talking about as far as story beats go.
Well, that's good to know.
In fact,
obviously Brian K. Vaughan evolves into a much better writer over time.
Oh, no, absolutely.
He actually started in 96. I'm just going to throw that out real quick. His first credit was for Marvel Comics' Tale from the Age of Apocalypse #2.
Ooh.
But if I remember right, this was like the first one where he had like the full job, like do what you want kind of thing.
That seems to be how it's credited. Yeah.
I do know there was earlier stuff, but I think this gave him more of a name. Absolutely. This was by no means a great work, but I don't believe that it was absolutely horrible.
I've definitely read things worse than this.
Yes. I actually really liked the arc that started with issue 12, I believe it was. And the arc that's right after this ends here is we actually do get more of a grounding character in the Senator's daughter that they introduce at the end of this volume.
Okay. The only thing I can really say to that is, if the people who are listening out there want to go ahead and check that out, that's cool for them. Having not read it, I can't really comment.
No, and that's okay. Mainly what I was going to say is this really does stink of a freshman effort. It's like there are a lot of cool things in here that are just not done well. There are a lot of... I actually did like the arc about the writer who is batshit crazy and shoots the people, and I thought that was a great idea. I just don't think it was done well.
And I think that really is the definition of the freshman effort, is when you look at this and say, this has awesome ideas. I love the ideas that
had
are on
a lot
here.
of...
Like, I can tell what you're trying to do. You're just not executing it.
It does have a lot of potential that it never lived up to. And I feel that the series did get better towards the end. but it's still never.
It's funny because I'm like, you guys are talking about awesome ideas, and I'm like, I saw no awesome ideas in this. I saw a lot of ideas, definitely, but I just saw.
Well, no, there are definitely some cool ideas. Just the whole thing of like, she's the half-human daughter of a plant elemental sired by a wizard. So she's kind of like, she's half human, but she's half plant elemental, and she's caught between worlds, and like one half of her heritage says like, you need to completely destroy this thing, and the other half of her is going, but this is the thing that I love. And that, like, that conflict inherently I think is interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
and
but
that conflict is never fully resolved.
What does she love?
Is one of my problems.
Being a human,
I don't get
I
that.
guess. Well,
And she loves the tree.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing. The tree, which disappears for fucking issues at a time and then randomly comes back. Because she has it in the issue before she runs into Pilot again.
Does she?
When she gets on the train.
I thought that was a different plant.
No, she calls it Daphne. She introduces it to the two guys that are on the train. I'm almost positive because I remember going, what?
I'd have to flip back through it.
I mean, but the thing is like, I see that the ship story, there is something there he's getting at, but it gets so buried under him wanting to shock people.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. You look at this and you go, there's a good idea here. I see what you want to do, and you're just not doing it.
But the thing is that the end to my response is, because he's trying so hard to shock me, I have no idea what that thing is. Like, I suppose that, like, if that, like Brant said, 12 issues in, you have a 2-part series where she is out at sea, she's going somewhere, or she's trying to get away from something, and you have this guy that's clearly mentally unhinged, doing these things, and he sets things up, and blah, blah, blah. Maybe she's filling you in on the details. Maybe it's a statement about the inherent fucking, like, about how people are base and deceitful and care only about their own glory. I don't know. Like, maybe there's something there if you took the time to tease it out. But, like, the issues he's dealing with in here are issues that cannot be, like,
I just thought of a good analogy for that story arc. I like it because it makes me think of a Charlie Kaufman story, but it fails in that he is nowhere near as good as Charlie Kaufman.
Well, yeah, it has none of the subtlety or art of Charlie Kaufman. Or, like, when you look at like a Hitchcock thriller, the things that make those movies great are not the gore, they're not the fucking moments of, like, death and dismemberment. It's the subtlety. It's how he builds to those moments. And, like, I mean, it's definitely, like, I mean, there's definitely, when I read the Challenger story, I'm like, there's Brian K. Vaughan. That's what he wants to do. That's what he can do. That is what he is quite capable of doing. I just wish that he would have I wish somebody had been there going, dude, relax. I just read the first 3 issues you have planned out for this. Relax.
Well, I mean, maybe they did, though. I mean, think about what kind of tight timelines comics appears to be. So maybe it did take until issue 12 for them to get that through
and that's
and
entirely
hash that out
possible.
And talk about it.
He's trying to tell you to talk into the microphone.
Yeah, I caught that.
I'm trying to tell Brant to talk into the microphone because he's turned away from it. Sorry.
I've stopped trying to be subtle about it. Because when I go on Back Matter, I have people on that don't normally record with us, and I think we've gotten a lot better about our technique. But it's not like trying to tell, like, somebody who's just like, yeah, and then I was, like, walking, and then I did this thing, and then I saw this guy, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? And then I was like, and you're just like, you need to talk into the microphone. You can't like look to where the microphone is not and then talk.
So now that I completely derailed what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that apparently from what Cade's saying, there is a relaxed moment. I think the reason it's hard for me to be and I will be upfront about the fact that it's hard for me to be even-handed about this book because being as regular listeners to this podcast will know, my least favorite thing when I am indulging in content, in any kind of content, is feeling like I'm being manipulated. I hate that. I understand that the purpose of art in general is to manipulate or evoke emotion, but don't telegraph it to me, man.
There are better ways to do it.
Yeah.
Everything in here is I totally see what you were doing and I want to feel those emotions, but the way that you did it makes me not want to feel those emotions because I'm upset because you just took everything that I was feeling and sort of railroaded it into and now you feel sad or now you feel disgusted instead of letting me sort of naturally be like, oh wow, geez, this woman is fucking insane. Oh my God. They just have he just has to write it so that you go, oh my God, she's insane. Yeah, look at what she did. Oh my God, yeah. She's totally insane. And it just feels really forced and it's upsetting.
Yeah, I do. But I mean, I think in my mind the only good thing about this book is that apparently it got out whatever was in his brain that and then once he got it out, he was able to kind of eventually write Saga, which I think is fucking solid as all hell. So one of my friends called me the other day and was like, I'm at the comic shop, and I was like, what should I read? And he goes, read Saga. And so I wanted to double check it with you, and I was like, yes, read Saga, do it, because it's good.
A friend of mine who never read comics said to me, actually probably a year ago at this point, You know what's going on with comics. I've never read one. What should I read? And I said, read Saga. And she just went ape shit on that book. She absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I mean it's good.
It's incredibly accessible, especially to people who haven't read a whole lot of comic books.
And if he had to write this so that we could get that, I'm okay with it.
And sometimes you just got to write Ultimate X-Men.
Yeah, I mean
nobody has to write Ultimate X-Men.
It's not true. Sometimes it must be done.
Sometimes
that book did not need to happen. I'm sorry.
Sometimes
so many of the best writers now worked on that book at one point or another.
Yeah, awesome writers like Mark Miller and Brian Wood. Brian Wood worked on that, didn't he?
Robert Kirkman, Brian K. Vaughan.
Yeah.
Which one? Wait, what are we talking about?
Ultimate X-Men.
I have no frame of reference for that work.
It had its moments.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciated the fact that it was an environment in which you could be like, yeah, guess what? This mutant's dead. Fucking dead. Deal with it. Dead. Not coming back.
What was I watching? It's funny because we were talking about this on Courtney Crumrin, and then the other day I was doing something, and my daughter Audrey was watching Criminal Minds, and one of the main characters was tied up and had a gun to his head, or something was happening and he gets kicked over and he suffocates. And then you could tell there was going to be a commercial break there, but she's watching it on Netflix, so there isn't. And then the bad guy comes back in and resuscitates him. And then 5 minutes later puts a gun to his head and starts pulling the trigger with the whole Russian roulette thing. And I'm like, you've already blown your load, dude. There's no way I'm going to buy that this character's going to fucking die now because he was just dead. And you brought him back. So it's game. You've just lost all credibility at that point.
Actually, it's funny reading Swamp Thing. The issues where Tefé has those people tied up in the back of their van, and they're getting them out, and they've got duct tape over their mouths. Just put me right back to our Empowered long run, and I'm like, that's not how you gag somebody.
It's true.
I've had duct tape on my mouth; it comes right off.
It really does.
Unless they wrap it around your head.
Yeah, you got to
again.
stick it to itself. But I don't know what. Anyways.
Anyway.
This podcast has gone to hell.
Is there anything else worthwhile?
I want to say this. Chard
Thing?
would say that for the stakes must be set and they must be high for fiction to mean anything, and that's fine. I agree with him in a general way. I usually disagree with him in specific ways, but I think that the opposite is also true. I think if you make the stakes too high and just start killing motherfuckers left and right,
Well,
it becomes meaningless.
Killing people indiscriminately is not about. That's not stake setting. And I think that's the problem.
Exactly.
Is that there are no stakes set.
Yeah.
Arguably, in that first couple, on the boat, like what stakes are set? I mean, other than this guy's like, I'm going to stab you, and then we're going to kill each other because,
especially after you've seen her regenerate several times, like nothing's going to happen to her. Like she falls off the boat, she gets stabbed, she like any of these things happen to her. Like she's not going to die. These are all new characters. We don't care about them.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's why it happened too early, or it was just rushed into. But yeah, the rest of it, like even the whole thing with the fire in the forest, and it's like, I get it. That's an important tree. And to a certain extent, I was kind of like, wow, she's going to go and burn that tree. I get it. Like, I kind of was almost expecting her to be like, no, you know what? 3 humans aren't worth this thing. Yeah. And like, so I get like maybe, and then, but of course she doesn't necessarily have the relationship with the green and all that stuff in there. And so it's like, okay, so she makes this choice and then she's going to be haunted by it. But like tying them up and throwing them in a truck and then being like, I'm going to kill one of you. And there's nothing about that felt like stake setting. It felt like pettiness.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It felt like emotional immaturity. And if that's what I was supposed to get out of it, I got it, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, I guess thinking about it, at any point, is there a moment where Tefé has something to lose?
I mean, I guess arguably when the plant samurai shows up and harasses Swamp Thing,
which is still not resolved.
Yeah, like when he arguably first shows up and attacks Swamp Thing and Arcane, is that her name?
Yep.
Arguably that's supposed to help set a stage where now Tefé exists in a world where she has something to lose because...
Does she really care about
Well, she doesn't because she's not there.
And that's the
she's
problem.
Never met them.
Yeah.
She doesn't really, her father sent her away when she was really young. She has a lot of resentment towards her mother. If they died, would she care? Is that like a stake for her? Is that something that if they had died, would she oh, now I'm going to seek vengeance on the green? I really don't think that she would. I think that she would just go now I'm going to kill this human because of some reason. Yeah. There's no rhyme or reason to her actions. It's pure reactions to the wrong person.
Yeah. Well, and that reminds me of the other thing that seemed really weird, which was that, they had the whole sequence in issue 2, I guess, where Swamp Thing is taking her, the whole backflash to him taking her and they're talking. I infer, as I haven't read a lot of Swamp Thing previous to this, that Swamp Thing can kind of go anywhere, anytime, right? He can kind of be wherever he wants to be.
Anywhere the green is.
So if the green knows where she is, and he knows now that she's running around, why wouldn't he show up and be like, my daughter, no, we need to talk about this. We need to have a relationship. You need to understand.
He didn't actually know she was running around.
Well, which seems weird because she's been in the green and the green knows that she's
right. That's what I'm trying to say. Is the mom knows that she's around.
No, she doesn't. They actually go into this in issue 2.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The mom comes to the house because she thinks that her daughter has died. She doesn't know that she regenerated.
Oh, right, because of the whole body thing.
Yeah, but I
guess, I forgot about
one of the reasons that Constantine actually comes into the story is because Swamp Thing and her mother want to make sure she's dead.
Right.
Because they're afraid that she might be alive.
Right.
It is. I feel like reading this, there's 2 things that really kind of bother me. There's 2 things that I think of, right? One, it would be so much more awesome if the green was Fiddler's green from Sandman, which it could be because it's Vertigo.
That's just your answer to everything. Sandman.
It totally, Sandman is good. But reading this, I was reminded of Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ, in which Willem Dafoe plays Christ and Harvey Keitel plays Peter. And a large portion of the first part of the movie is Jesus trying to figure out, he knows God has spoken to him. He knows that he's going to be the savior, but he has no idea how to do that. And first he goes to Peter and he says, it's about love. It's about acceptance, blah, 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 blah. And then he has this dream about like, that's very like Storm and Drang and like and he's like, no, it's not about love. It's about the axe. Like you have to bring it to them. And Peter's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? First you're saying it's about love. Now you're saying it's about the axe. You need to make up your mind, dude. You don't have like, but it's done in a way that's very much like you're traveling with him. So you see his conflict. You see what his choices are. You see what he sees. With Tefé, who I feel they're putting in a very similar position. She lives in between two worlds, right? She has to be, her father is a plant elemental, and he's also like this big dude in the green, and like the green has certain needs because blah, blah, blah. They're at odds with human beings. Human beings also have certain needs, blah, blah. She exists in kind of this middle ground, and that can be an effective and incredibly like incredibly effective way to tell these very complex stories. And I think at the end of the day, it's not that this is a freshman effort that really bothers me. It's that this was the wrong first project for him. He was trying to take on entirely too much because, like, this is shit that you have to spend a lot of time with. You can't tell stories these complex all at once. You need to let them draw out. And this was the reboot of Swamp Thing.
I completely agree.
That part of being an inexperienced anything is biting off more than you can chew.
And I agree that, and I think that, like, there are definitely freshman efforts that you read where you're like, okay, this is not all there. But, like, I see where you were going with that. And after 9 issues, I'm still kind of like, I have no idea where you're fucking going with this. And I don't care. I'm not going to read anymore. You have failed to sell me on this idea. And that's, like, that would suck a lot more for me were this 2000 and I was reading this for the first time. I clearly, you know, have the luxury of being 15 years after this so that I can be like, oh, yes, you did figure it out. You did get what was going on. But
if this would have seemed better in 2000.
I mean, I think it would have been more
sell well, and it didn't last very long. It lasted 20 issues.
I think if this was going up at the same point as like the Authority.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's like this entire era of kind of hyper-violence.
Yeah, and I wonder if he fell prey to that and ended up stinking, like, kind of being like, oh, well, this will sell comic books, and kind of like, or even editorial going, the hyperviolence is going to sell comic books. You need to put a lot in there.
I definitely could see that being the case.
Yeah, and I mean, I wonder if it suffers from being of its time.
It's very possible. I mean, I don't think that this was a great series by any means. I think it does get better after these 9 issues, but it still is not a great series.
Yeah, I mean,
clearly it was just good enough to get them to buy off on Why the Last Man.
I'm telling you, man, it's that Challenger story, dude, because that's the gem. That is the gem in this crown of poop. Like that, there is real, real feeling in that story. There is that moment is like a breath of fresh air.
I think that we're good with Gem and the Crown of Poop.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think that we should move on to recommendations.
Recommendations?
Recommended. Brant, would you like to go first?
Sure.
And what do you have for us this evening?
I'm going to call an audible. I'm not going to present the book that's in my bag. Because it occurred to me that I actually... It's come up a few times in the show. Like, I'm a pretty big Superman fan. And I'm a Batman fan. But it may actually be that in my heart of hearts, I'm a Wonder Woman fan more than any other. Because I was going to recommend Batman and Robin by Frank Miller for a lot of different reasons, but mostly because I want to have a really earnest conversation about whether or not that book should be read as farce or seriously.
Mostly
You
because
mean
you
All-Star
didn't want me to
Batman?
Yeah, All-Star. Yeah, All-Star.
Askbar,
Yeah.
as Chard
Mostly
likes
because
to
you want
refer
to
to it.
inflict pain on me.
Yeah, mostly. Well, and I love Jim Lee's art, but there's some things in that book that, well, you want to talk about a book that's like, sometimes there are really good ideas. There's some individual ideas in there that I'm just like, that is so awesome. And then there's things about it that I'm just like, this is so either the strangest thing or you are actually secretly funny and you did not know it, Frank.
There's a scene in that near the beginning of issue 1 where somebody is like, there's a woman walking around and she's in her underwear,
Yes.
and it's not quite like a thong.
Yes.
It's like a halfback or whatever they call
Vicky
it. Right?
Vale.
It's Vicky Vale, right? And I remember thinking when I was reading it, I was like, this looks like it was drawn in 1995. Because that's exactly what women in their underwear looked like in comic books in 1995.
Right. I do not want to make light of anybody's medical condition, but there have been pictures circulating of Frank Miller, like within the last year or so, where he looks skeletal. Like people are speculating that he's undergoing very severe chemotherapy, and people wondering earnestly, like, has Frank Miller had brain cancer for the last 10 years?
Well,
Could
I
that
think
possibly
that's...
go some distance to explaining why he has been so shit-ass wacky the last little while?
Probably has cancer in some capacity, and people are just hoping. I think people want to be able to look fondly back on his other stuff and be like, he wasn't always this crazy. But quite frankly, from my opinion, you go back and read Dark Knight Returns and all that shit. He was an authoritarian asshole then. He's an authoritarian asshole now.
I'm not trying to excuse anything, but he has definitely kind of gone off the deep end.
Yeah, but I think
since
that.
2001, let's say.
I think that the Sin City movie, it was about the time where there was like a, hey, I'm Frank Miller, I can do what I want.
Right.
Like that was about 2005, 2006.
So like unlocks the box where it's like, well, now I can be this way and people will be fine.
Yeah.
Like I make enough money, I don't need to muzzle myself the way I was. Yeah. So I don't know. I think some of that's wishful thinking. But this is all preamble because I'm actually going to recommend that we read The Hiketeia by Greg Rucka because I love Wonder Woman. Like the more I think about it, and that's an awesome Wonder Woman book, and it has Batman in it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be said about that, like how Rucka presents that. But I was thinking on the way here that I really like Superman because I feel like he's this at his core, he's a metaphor that power does not need to corrupt. Absolutely. And Batman is a metaphor for with sheer will and determination, any challenge can be overcome. That's really what the heart of like Batman is ready for anything is. It kind of evokes for me is you can overcome anything if you try hard enough.
There's who wrote Catch 22, Slaughterhouse 5. It's
Kurt Vonnegut.
Kurt Vonnegut. I believe it was he who had some saying like, up until the age of 25, any man believes that under the right circumstances he can become the world's greatest badass. And I think Batman is that thought taken to its most extreme.
Yeah. And then for me, I think that Wonder Woman is kind of this weird, like if anything, she's the most realistic of the three of them, which is that basically to be a person of principle, one must make choices that are hard, even in the face of like not being approved of by your friends. Because I think that some of the best stories about Wonder Woman are about her saying, this is the line, this is why the line exists, and I will not cross it.
Well, she's the realist cop between two idealists.
Yeah, kind of.
I like to refer to them as Superman is the optimist, Batman is the pessimist, Wonder Woman is the realist, and none of those three work as a pair. You need the Trinity.
Batman is a cynic, not a pessimist.
Well,
Batman is never going to go, I'm not going to go out and save Gotham because there'll just be more criminals tomorrow.
That's not necessarily pessimism.
There's a part of me that really thinks Batman would do that.
I wish
just,
that
like,
would be. I would read the shit out of that comic book.
Cross-legged, just
that'd only be good for like an issue.
So now I desperately want there to be a moe shoujo manga starring Batman. And I'm just imagining like this giant splash page with a sad Batman in the snow.
Like this is why I don't think Batman is a pessimist. Batman isn't looking at the glass going, it's half empty. Batman is looking at the glass and trying to figure out who fucking drank out of the glass. That's what he's trying to do. Because he knows it was one of you bastards. He knows it. And he did not give you permission. He did not give you permission.
Well, it depends.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that I derailed your...
No, it's fine. I do have to say, though, it depends. It depends on the Batman. That's one Batman.
That's
the other
true.
Batman is the one who then pulls out the canteen and fills the glass because he knew it was going to be half empty.
That's
there you go.
And he's not upset about it. He's just prepared.
That's fair.
But anyway, Hiketeia, just as a brief overview, it's about a young girl basically shows up on the doorstep of Wonder Woman's home and declares an ancient Grecian right to be protected. And in exchange, she basically promises to become Wonder Woman's slave. And there's all this, and one of the things that I really liked about it is that Rucka was really good about taking ancient Greek myth type stuff and incorporating it into the Wonder Woman mythos and really kind of having it be an impact. And so all hell kind of breaks loose when Batman shows up and says, this woman is a criminal, I'm going to take her. And Wonder Woman says, no, you're not, because she's invoked an ancient Grecian law that I am honor bound to abide by. And hilarity ensues.
Yeah, this is great because, like, the conflicts between Batman and Superman are very much like, I'm dark and nasty. Bruce, we all know that you're secretly a good guy. It's okay. But, like, the conflicts between Batman and Wonder Woman always tend to be like, we can't do this. And Batman saying, we can't do this. And Wonder Woman going, we can't not do this. Like, you're the only one that doesn't see it. And I don't care what you think of me because I'm not afraid of you. My favorite fucking Batman stories are the stories where people basically tell Batman to go fuck himself because he's not the big scary monster of Gotham. Like,
so this is a complete aside, but one of the interesting things that I like to think about is the shifting timeline in comic books and how certain characters were now certain ages at certain times. So, like, right now, if Batman is about 30, which is about the same age I was, he probably grew up watching a lot of the same Saturday morning cartoons that I did. Transformers and G.I. Joe and Mask and shit like that. And I just want to pause for a moment and contemplate a world, let's say 15, 20 years from now, when Batman, like before his parents died, when he was like 5, 6 years old, just fucking loved the shit out of My Little Ponies. Just more than anything.
I will become something they all fear.
I want to meet that Batman.
Bat Pony Man.
Anyway.
So yes.
Flutter Batman.
The other thing that I really like about this story is that timing wise, it was when in the JLA, it was kind of ramping up that there actually might be sexual tension between Batman and Wonder Woman, which I think is actually the thing that absolutely must happen. Forget Superman and Wonder Woman.
No, that's yes.
No, they did that in the Bruce Timm cartoon in Justice League Unlimited, and it was awesome there.
Because the other thing that is awesome about their dynamic versus Superman is arguably Wonder Woman is just about as strong as Superman post Infinite Crisis. Like, they go toe to toe on a regular basis. She has a couple of magic weapons, so that might be the difference as far as why she can go toe to toe with Superman. Superman will not physically engage Batman at any point in a conflict unless he's being controlled or some other outside force. Wonder Woman will literally, like, sometimes their arguments will literally lead to the situation where she's like, okay, Bruce, I am now going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, no, we should be reasonable. And he's like, no, I can't. I'm Batman. And she's like, okay, I'm going to punch you now.
Yeah.
Which I think is hilarious because Superman's always like, I can't, like, I like Superman. But, he's kind of Pollyanna. He's like, it would be so bad if I punched someone, I might hurt them. And Wonder Woman's like, all right. That's it. I'm going to fucking punch you in the face. You're so good at all this shit. Let's just see if you can handle it.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, tee-hee.
I agree. Awesome. I also have to say, completing our derailment, that I was super fucking stoked about about Batwoman, about Wonder Woman Batman, until it reached its conclusion, at which point I was like, hey, Grant Morrison, here is my ball sack. Fucking let me smack you in the face with it, because you fucked me over again. Yeah. How the fuck can you do that consistently?
Was Morrison writing at that point?
He may not have been.
I think that was when Wade was writing, actually.
Was it? Wade, no, because the way they ended was
Mark Wade would never do that to me.
No, it's not that. Mark Wade could do that, but the way that they decide that they're not going to do a thing, if I fucking described it to you, which I don't want to because we haven't read it for the cast and I don't want to spoil it because it is a great run, is fucking right up Grant Morrison's alley because it has to do with fucking like an Amazonian time pod where Batman goes to the future and then like Wonder Woman is it's fucking super Grant Morrison. It's like I'll figure it out.
I have those trades. I'll have to go look because he gets off of it. Then Wade takes over. Then Kelly takes over for a while, who writes Obsidian Age.
But I mean, Grant Morrison wrote the first big chunk of it. Yeah. And I want to say, I mean, if it is not him, then it is either Mark Wade or Joe Kelly doing a great fucking Grant Morrison impersonation because
I'm Grant Morrison. Oh, that'd be kind of funny.
That's like it's almost as bad.
Grant Morrison is Scottish. Oh, I'm Grant Morrison.
I'm Grant Morrison. Hey, I'm gonna fuck with her wee head now. Whoa, watch me. Woo! I'm a scary monster. I have a bald head.
So,
I
yeah.
just took.
Wonder
And
Woman.
that's Hiketeia.
Wonder Woman's boot crushing Batman's skull is the cover of Hiketeia, which is just amazing.
Nice.
Yes, it is excellent.
So, Kayleigh, what did you bring this week?
Swamp Thing by Brian K.
Yep, that's what I brought.
Volume
The time loop has been complete. We're in paradox. Ah! All right.
I didn't want to bring another book that I felt ambivalent about, so I brought one that I'm just super stoked about. I've brought it before, Captain Marvel, because I absolutely adore it. It's fantastic.
Just to clarify, because there are like 9 Captain
Yeah,
Marvels.
This is the good Captain Marvel.
The Kelly Sue DeConnick.
This is the Kelly Sue DeConnick girl power.
Super awesome. Carol Sanders kicking ass.
Carol
Fantastic
Danvers.
run. Danvers. What did I say?
Sanders.
Oh, fuck.
Turned her into the daughter of a chicken magnate.
Man, see it?
Colonel Sanders flies into space. Oh, wait. I mean,
So do you just want to give like the quick overview of what's going on here?
Quick overview. Captain Marvel is kind of coming into her own. She's clearly an established hero, established as Miss Marvel, and she's now deciding whether or not to take the Captain Marvel name. She has these sort of like issues with herself where she has these personal bests that she wants to have, and but she feels like it's not a fair contest because now she's a superhero and she could never beat somebody's like best time when she was human, so now it's meaningless now. And I think
She was originally an Air Force pilot.
yeah. And I just think like the whole story comes really well around, and you get this very well-rounded character, and that you just absolutely fall in love with.
Awesome. Joe?
So, I brought something today that I read about on Comics Alliance, and so I got my hands on it, and I've been reading through it today, and it's really interesting. It's unlike a lot of things I've read before, and it is. I'm not sure if it's 12 issues are out, and it is called. I think it's called COPRA, COPRA. It might be COPRA, but
Short for Cop Rock?
yes, the return of the greatest show ever in the history of mankind. You're not getting an explanation for what Cop Rock is. Go to fucking Wikipedia and look it up, okay? I'm not going to talk about it because it hurts.
Anyway, Copra.
It's like the worst fucking idea for a show ever. What if we had cops and it was also a musical and also a television show? And also, I'm going to jump out a window now. No, it's about
Cocaine
this.
is a hell of a drug.
It's about my pitch will just be basically the in the first issue. There's a group of hero or powered individuals, and it has a very black ops feel. They've gone to acquire something, and they are transporting it away. And on the way, their transport is ambushed, and several people are killed, and they lose the item, and it ends up causing a lot of damage. And the story is about, and then they are kind of left like, what the fuck do we do now, right? Basically wanted for all this destruction. And the story is basically, from what I can piece together, I haven't finished it yet, is them kind of figuring out what the item was in the first place and trying to go after the people that have set them up. And it looks at the art style is really, I really like it. It reminds me a lot of like Matt Kint's art style from Mind Management. But the character designs and the story elements so far are really unique, and it's really, really interesting. I've not read anything like it before, so I thought it was something I kind of wanted to find out more about. Now that I'm reading it, I'm really enjoying it. So I thought I'd bring it here and recommend it and get it. It's by, it's published by, I think, Bergen Street Comics. I mean, it's a like super small press.
That's founded by Candace Bergen, I imagine.
Bergen Street Comics, no. And it's by Michael.
That's
perhaps
Murphy
it's-
Brown for anybody who didn't.
Yeah,
get that
it is
reference.
Murphy Brown. It could be Michelle Fife. It's Michel.
It is Michelle, but I think it's French Michelle, which is a man.
Right, yeah, like Michel.
Sure.
And the last name is Fiffe. So I'm assuming it's Fife, but it might be like Fife. I'm not sure. I'm sure I'm butchering it. I apologize. Or maybe I don't. I don't know. Like somebody once told me my Spanish was awful. And so suffer.
Okay. Cade, what do you got?
Okay, so Joe's pick was like nothing he'd ever read before, and my pick is like everything he's ever read before.
I thought you were going to say everything I've read before. And I'd be like, that was a true statement.
So you're pitching Batman.
No,
I read more than Batman.
Really?
Batman, Superman.
That's true.
So Legends of the Dark Knight.
So I brought a book that I kind of like for perverse reasons. That is not
Did you
going to
bring
get picked
porn?
because Andrew Chard is not here, and he actually likes this book, or at least a little bit. And this is Kevin Smith and Joe Quesada's Daredevil, The Man Without Fear, Marvel Knights, Guardian Devil. This was the rebranding before Quesada took over Marvel, and they were like, okay, well, we can't have the adult books being sold under the same imprint as the stuff that's okay for teens, kind of like.
They had their Marvel Knights line that was their whatever it was, or no, was this Marvel Max?
Marvel Max was
Marvel-
their adults, was
yeah,
their
Marvel Max-
mature readers line.
Right.
Marvel Knights was their.
It was just kind of like
late
slightly out of
teens.
continuity.
PG-13.
Yeah.
Which is funny because now everything is basically Marvel Knights.
Yes, it is.
Except for, like Marvel Adventures.
So they canceled the old Daredevil at like issue 380 or something like that, and then rebranded it as number one. That we can now be more gritty and let the writers actually do what they want. We don't have to censor them as much. And then the Marvel Max was, we don't have to censor them at all. But
Marvel Max was basically, let Garth Ennis do whatever the hell he's gonna do.
We don't really care at this point. And I thought his Punisher run is solid.
His Punisher
I
stuff
love
is
it.
amazing, but
I
it's
should
still
bring
kind
that.
of like Marvel Max is basically let
Yeah,
him do
just-
what he wants to do.
so yeah, this was Kevin Smith came on. I think this was some of his first comic work. It was 98. He may have done the Clerks comic before that. I'm not
I
sure.
think he did some clerk stuff.
And this is the story where Daredevil tells a younger superhero about the first time that he met the Kingpin and he pooped himself, right?
No.
I'm changing my recommendation yet again to another Tobiah Panshin original. That's like the sixth
No.
time I've done that.
No, never gonna happen.
Okay.
Wait a minute. You'll vote for his book, but you won't vote for my sad Batman book? Fuck you.
No, you didn't pitch your sad Batman.
I
book.
should have. I should have been like,
So what is Guardian Devil about? Just briefly,
sad Batman.
basically.
A crisis of faith. He falls back on what Okay. Daredevil goes through a transition, and he no longer has the support group he did in the original Daredevil run. Karen Page leaves. He and Foggy no longer have a practice. They're like looking for as much work as they can. And all of a sudden, a baby gets put into his lap, and he needs to take care of it from radical groups. Some who think the baby's the Messiah, others think it's the Antichrist. and he needs to try to figure it out and look at his own faith that he had fallen so far from. And I mean, it's Kevin Smith, so it's very, very, very wordy. But I think that it has some interesting points in it. So,
Cool. And for the record, Daredevil is sad red Batman.
No, he's
Not true at all.
He's not. I'm
not
just
true at all.
kidding. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say, Cade? Or can I go on to my pitch?
I guess I'll go out tonight.
Okay.
I guess tonight
go
I'll
on
go
to
out
yours,
and
because
be
most of
the
what I can say
knight.
about this book would massively spoil it.
So after
He's got a billy
our
club.
last episode, one of our listeners commented on the Facebook page saying that we should do more young adult stuff. And we're totally going to do that. We have a back matter coming out soon where we actually do talk about more young adult stuff with Joe and Joe's daughter, Audrey. But there's actually a series that I've been following, a webcomic, for about the last year and a half that just wrapped up. The trade is going to come out next May, but for right now, you can read the entire series.
I know what it is. I know what it is.
Online. What is it, Brant?
Nimona.
Yes, by Noelle Stevenson, who
So good.
has been writing Lumberjanes and apparently is going to be writing for Marvel pretty soon. Woohoo! They just announced at New York Comic Con, or slightly before that.
I just finished this comic this weekend. I didn't know.
Yeah, it's super.
I didn't know it was
awesome.
coming out in graphic novel.
Yeah, no, it just she just put up the last strip this last week, and a print edition is going to come out in May, I think.
By HarperCollins, I believe.
So briefly, it's kind of a weird setup in that it's a world with kings and knights, and it's kind of medieval, but then they also have televisions and cell phones.
Yeah, those things existed at the same time.
Yeah, totally.
Tech Camelot.
Yeah, basically. And the story focuses on essentially a state-sanctioned villain named Sir Blackheart, who shows up, does villainous things, and is opposed by the heroic Sir Goldenloin, who is actually his childhood first romance.
Yeah.
Romance.
However you want to read that, sure. And the series starts with this girl showing up basically at his secret hideout going, yeah, the agency sent me over. I'm totally your new sidekick. And he's like, no, that didn't happen. And she's like, no, yeah, totally. I've got all these awesome shape-shifting powers. He's like, all right, I'll give you a shot. And she becomes his new sidekick. And he brings her into all the villainous shit that he's doing because apparently the administration's secretly up to no good and there's a conspiracy going on and he's going to prove it. And everybody lies and he's really not a bad guy. He's just doing it because nobody else is willing to. And it's just this really cool all ages story with a lot of great character development in it.
It is really good. I've been recommending it to everybody.
Truth, friendship, love.
Yeah, and I actually did not realize. I went back to the very beginning to look at the first few pages, and the art improves incredibly over the course of the series.
I wonder if she redrew certain parts of it for the publish for the.
I don't know. Maybe she will. But Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, and I will, when I throw up the episode on the website, I will put a link to it, whether we pick it or not.
Brant, what will the voting be?
Captain Marvel, because she's basically Marvel's Wonder Woman. And I just
That's
discovered
fair.
my love for Wonder Woman.
It's
so.
true.
That's fair.
I'm going to go with Hiketeia.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty much DC's Captain Marvel.
Exactly.
I don't know that works both ways.
Oh, I have to.
It does.
I have to say something real quick, not to influence votes, but to. The other reason I wanted to bring any of the books that I brought was because we've been pretty anti-DC, and I want to spread the DC love because there's plenty to like about DC Comics.
That's fair.
I
As long as
was
it wasn't
actually
written in
thinking
the
about
last
bringing
3
some of
years.
my favorite DC books for that reason, but then I'm like, we've been talking about a lot of DC, and I don't think people would vote for it if I did.
Joe, what are you voting for?
I'm going to vote for Hiketeia. I desperately want to talk about As we talked about on our Rose City episode, we met Kelly Sue DeConnick at Rose City, and she's fucking incredible. She immediately became my new hero. And I desperately want to talk about Captain Marvel.
Replacing your old hero, Sad Batman.
Sad Batman. No, my hero has always been Science Batman. That's a whole rant in there that I don't want to get into right now. But I think for me, Hiketeia, there was a point where Greg Rucka was writing Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman at the same time. And that is fucking amazing to me.
He's a phenomenal writer.
The fact that you could write three such distinct and not just like these are arguably some of the biggest superheroes in the world, and the fact that he could write each of them and not just write them but have celebrated runs on each of them is just fucking insane to me. And Hiketeia, I think, really, it's just so good. It's just so good. And it's like I said, I love seeing Batman get put in his place. I love it. It's my favorite thing in all of DC. So, yeah. We will talk about Captain Marvel because...
Well, voting's not done yet.
Yeah. Well...
Mr. Jumps the gun.
Excuse you.
Okay.
It's going to be done right now, though.
Cade, what are you voting for?
Well, I had... my vote is a little... I feel a little bad about my vote because I knew right away what I was going to vote for, regardless of what the rest of you guys pitched. But however, I do really want to talk about Nimona and Captain Marvel and Joe's book, COPRA.
You don't even know what it's called, and you're like, I really want to talk about it.
We're discussing, is it
He's
COPRA or
being
COPRA?
COPRA. No, it is COPRA. I think it is COPRA. Yeah.
COPRA? Okay.
I'm just giving you a hard time. I haven't seen you in a while. I'm giving you a hard time.
Okay. But no, my vote is for Hiketeia. That's been on the top of my reading list for so long, and I've just never got around to reading it.
Awesome. Well, then I will take this opportunity to vote for Captain Marvel.
Thank
But
you. I
we will
appreciate
be reading for Hiketeia, which is actually a book that I wanted to read for a long time. Because everybody says, like, what's a good Wonder Woman story? Hiketeia. And I have not yet had the opportunity to read it. So
it's like I said, I desperately want to talk about Captain Marvel. I've read this trade, and I fucking love it. It's like girl power times 1,000.
I read the first issue, and the art kind of threw me for a loop, and so I didn't pick it up
I
again.
love that
There's
art.
new artist.
Yes, I've been reading it since the new artist came on, and
I was
I've been
flipping
enjoying
through
it.
this book, and I was floored
There's
by the
a
art.
scene, they fight the Absorbing Man in the very first part of the first issue, and there's a scene where they're leaving, and somebody says something to, maybe calls her Miss Marvel, and she goes... like, and Captain fucking America is like, that's Captain Marvel, like, or that's Captain Danvers or something. Like, he corrects her and then specifically says she outranks me. And right from that moment, I was
she's a
fucking
colonel in the military.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, something like that. Like he corrects the person that's speaking to her, and then specifically says that she outranks him.
She's Air Force, and I don't think that there is a colonel in the Air Force.
Yeah, but I mean, regardless of her actual rank, it was at that moment
she's
where
a
I
captain, and I don't think that Steve Rogers was ever more than a private.
No, and
he's a captain, and he gets promoted to commander when he takes over S.H.I.E.L.D., I believe.
But
okay,
I mean, it's just such a
you
good.
Say so.
It's such a good moment, and it sets the tone for the rest of this book, which is like, we are not fucking around here, right? Like, and for that.
Well, it's definitely something that we're going to have to get on.
We will talk about it.
But for next week, we're going to be reading Hiketeia.
Yep.
And we will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Now get out of here.
Thank you for listening to View from the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title, but like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books. In the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.